Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel for today's video. I wanted to talk to you today about how the narcissist becomes the way they do. How do they get on tracks and how do these things happen? So let's jump in. The narcissist, for instance, they grow up and they're going to be on a certain vibration. We all are. But whatever that vibration is, there's going to be a head narcissist in the family. The hierarchy of narcissist caregiver is runs the whole household like a cult. So there's certain things that you have to do. And if you don't do them, you're going to get the crap kicked out of you. You're going to get shamed and all kind of stuff. So you're going to listen and you're going to do as you're told. A lot of times they don't want you to process your thoughts and your emotions. They don't want you to think really. They want you to be an autopilot. And that's kind of what they try to train you up to be. And that's why I say this is innate to some degree, because when you don't become a narcissist, you go the other way and you really never liked this way of living and you always thought it was stupid. It's almost like as a child, you can kind of see through all the flaws, but your word doesn't mean anything. And you're not going to say anything because you're going to get in big trouble, because everything you would say would be offensive to these individuals. And you always look at them like, why are you doing everything stupid? Or why do you make everything so difficult, so hard? Why do you start so many arguments? Why do you all disagree? Why can't you just get along? Why do you tell lies? All this stuff, right? And as a child, if you're an empath, that's how you're going to see things. But in that family, there's a lot of rules. And if you're going to go the narcissistic way, those rules are going to start to build constructs in you. It's kind of like there's things that you have to do as an empath living in a narcissistic family, like when you have to lie and you have to wear a mask too when you're a child and you're growing up in those homes, at least until you get to an age to where, and you hate it though, till you get to an age to where you can do for yourself. And typically you can't wait to get out of the house so you can move out, but you're just not of age yet. But you have to wear a mask, you have to lie and stuff like that, because if you didn't, you wouldn't make it in a narcissistic household. You would never be able to do anything, and you would always be stuck at home with them dealing with their crap. You would always be in trouble, because a lot of times the people that you're forced to hang out with too are narcissistic, because the way that you grew up in these families, they don't give you, when you're the empath, the scapegoat, they don't give you nice clothes, they don't give you any money. Whenever you have good, cool friends that you want to hang out with, they destroy you in front of them. They make you look like a mockery, call you names, they will belittle you. And they will do things while the friends that you would want to hang out with would be at your house, and then they would always just continually make fun of you from then on. They just wouldn't respect you either. There's things like that. When you go to school, you won't have nice clothes, you won't have what the other kids have. But your other siblings will, but you're the scapegoat. I always say they never give you the tools you need when you live at home to succeed. And they're constantly giving you inferiority complex. But we actually become free thinkers. We emotionally process. So I wouldn't want it any other way. What I'm getting at is when you have to do that, like say you have to lie and wear a mask and stuff, you hate it. So it's kind of like what I say is the glue didn't stick. You did it because you had to do it out of survival. But that stuff don't stick to you like cement. But to them it does. It solidifies in them. And that's where these tracks start to get built. Then these ways of doing things, because they solidify themselves in these modes and ways that the head narcissist is having you operate, for instance, and then they actually perfect them. The negative energy attachment starts from the outside, but they're already susceptible because they're going to go that way. And there's only usually one black sheep in the family. And a lot of times they don't even wake up and they're not successful either. That's typically the case. But even if they grew up in a wherever, typically they were probably going to go down that road themselves anyway. I just think if they didn't grow up in it, say they didn't grow up in a narcissistic family, they may grow up to where they would still, I hate to say this, but they'd still probably never have a chance of being a child of the light. They may not be as bad if they didn't grow up in a narcissistic family, but they would be, I guess, what they would call the lukewarm. they would never get to a place that would bear any fruit. And that's my opinion of it. Way of thinking. And what happens is when you have the head narcissist who controls the whole family, what's going on there? They're not vulnerable. They don't show love. You don't know anything about them either. And they're your parent or whoever the caregiver is. But what they are doing essentially as well, they have negative energy attachment, but also when you don't process your thoughts and emotions, and that's what they don't do. Those are things that make you an individual. Those are things that help you to decide what you need and what you don't need, what you like and what you don't like. Those are things that make you authentic. Authentically who you are is the need to process emotions. And in some cases, and in a lot of ways, it's hurtful to yourself because you have to go through injuries and pain. We all do. But then we have to go back and we have to process what we just went through. So it's almost like you have to go through it again. Any kind of pain or trauma you went through, it's almost like you got to process it now. So which means you got to continue to think about it until you deal with it. And for them, because they don't like to process any kind of emotions, it's like they just, in their mind, they bury it under the rug. And what's happening, that's why a narcissist can do okay in their 20s, but in their 40s, it starts to get much worse because that burying under the rug thing, the trash pile in their 20s is here, and they're burying it under the rug, and in their 30s, it's here. In the 40s, it's just coming out all over the place. It's because it's unhealed wounds. That's what's going on. Because if you don't process your emotions, then you will never get healing from whatever happened to you. And you will also never have individuality. You won't understand things as clear cut as you should. To firmly know how you should treat people and how you shouldn't, and why, and how exactly it feels like, because you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes because you went through those emotions. And you know exactly what it feels like for certain types of emotions and things that are forced upon somebody because you had them forced upon you, and because you were forced to process those emotions after and deal with it and heal up from it. It also helped you. The processing is to take the time to absorb the whole thing and make it make sense of where it was right, where it was wrong, why I wouldn't do this. If it was evil, I wouldn't want to do this to somebody because I know what it feels like. So these are things that help you to know more clear and cut, and it gives you more of a stance on what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's evil, and why I feel that way. I can explain it to you. And these individuals, because they don't process their emotions, they end up not processing a whole lot of anything. That's how they get into autopilot. And so when you get into autopilot, you're kind of you start to detach from your spirit man, and you start to not really have much of the love sectors as well. You start to kind of just that's when you get into things of this world, like monetary things or items and looking good and the lusts of the world. Because the processing of emotions also helps you to understand the spiritual realm. You get closer to your spirit man, and you get closer to the spiritual realm, and understanding that there's more than meets the eye here, that it's not just, and I'm going somewhere when I leave this place. And so when you start to process things like that, it helps you to understand what's right and what's wrong, justice, and then you start thinking about other things, like, well, where am I going to go when I get out of here, when I leave the earth, Am I prepared for that? And you start thinking about God and heaven, hell, and how you want to treat your neighbor. And these emotions start to become the gateway that gets you to understanding more of the spiritual realm and getting interested in that next. So it's kind of like a way of you moving to that level. But when you don't process your emotions and your thoughts, you're in your lower self, and your lower self's only going to think about this physical plane. And what's going on is now you have like the narcissist hierarchy. Not only are they dealing with negative energy, and they have these patterns that are not good, because now they're almost on low vibrational demonic patterns. The way that they are orchestrating the whole household, the way you do things, the way, like I said, they don't want you to think, they want you to just obey their commands. And that's not right. It's not good. You want to be able to process, and you want to treat people right. And when you don't process your thoughts, then you you get cold. And that also cuts off the pathway to your spirit man, which gets you to it. It keeps you gets you in this physical realm, the 3D instead of, say, the 5D or whatever they call it. But the major thing is when you don't process thoughts, there's no forgiveness there for the people that hurt you, for those things that you don't want to process, because maybe there is pain in them. And you don't mind dealing with the anger and the get back, but you don't want to deal with the pain and the hurt that you went through. or you don't want to deal with the hard work of having to deal with what happened to you and where do you go from here? And where do you go from here in a righteous way, in the best way? And the best way is always the righteous way. But you have to forgive people for things they've done to you. And that's hard. It's very hard. And sometimes it's always a process. Sometimes it takes a while. If it's a very difficult thing to get over, I wouldn't expect you to just decide tomorrow, if it happened to you today, for you to give them in your thoughts forgiveness. You don't have to tell them. It's just you have to let it go like that. You have to give it to God and forgive them. And because that's how you move on. And because Christ was perfect, so if he forgave everybody, then we have to as well. I mean, we have to follow that lead, and it's right. It's right even if you don't even believe the word, but you just take the wise teachings of the Bible, and that's fine too, because there's no better way of you healing. That's how you get healing, and that's how you get over it. That's how you have to go through it. And when you don't process thoughts, you don't heal. When you don't process thoughts, you start to fling things. More unhealthy stuff starts to become you. And then when you have children, now, because you're not healed at all, now your tracks that you're running and the ways that you're operating the household now is under this hurt and shame. So it has to be under some sort of power and control, because that's how it is. And sensitive when people come at you. And so this is how it gets started with the narcissist. They do the same thing. They follow the same ways. And I used to call it the cattle run, when they just believe whatever's out there because they don't process. So they just, whatever society thinks we believe too. But they call it something else. The herd mentality. And that's what they are. They live under the authority of the herd mentality. And that is the matrix. So the narcissist and the narcissist hierarchy, and they're all in this herd mentality. And the herd mentality is always on the vibration of the matrix. A low vibration, a vibration of fear, anxiety, paranoia. And that's why they're always pumping fear out of the news and everything. There's never good news. And that's kind of like what the matrix is about. Start to make some evils. They'll tell you they're good. They're not good. They're evil. And so they skew everything. And that's how the matrix is set up. But the matrix is always set up for you not to think, just to be an autopilot. And that's why they call it the beast system to some degree, because it's like you become like the beast of the field. No love. You're out to prey on people. You don't think in a higher level of thinking. You don't care about the spirit realm. You're out for yourself. You just care about the things around you, the lust of the world. So that's kind of how they get on these tracks. And that's how it starts to form. And then they start to cultivate it. So that's all. If you can give me a like, subscription, and thumbs up. Till next time, Soldier up. Peace, we out.